Tonight, when we talk about sleep, I'll preface by saying this, that sleep is important and we cannot overlook it. It is so important that it is one of the two things I think that all humans, not only I know that all humans, that sleep is one of those things that all humans should be able to, not only should be able to, they should be doing it well and frequently and easily. Easily is the key thing here. So sleeping and pooping is a natural human behavior and action that should just take place readily. So if for some reason you or anyone you know that isn't able to sleep naturally, folks, that means not loading up on drugs and medications. I'll even talk about some supplements that are worthy or not worthy of taking tonight. The sleep should happen. It should happen readily and easily. And if for some reason we are missing out on one of the most fundamental things of being a human being, and that is sleeping and pooping. Tonight, we're going to focus on sleeping. If for some reason we're not doing it, just kind of listen closely, and there's going to be a lot of different options, and there's different roads to travel depending on what kind of sleep condition or issue you might be having. And hopefully I'm going to make this as simple as possible tonight.
Awesome, Bart. Let's get into it. So we got a couple clinical insights tonight.
Yeah, a couple of clinical insights, although they are same conditions. This is kind of neat. Two totally different patients and the same thing. And I want to share this. It's interesting enough. I think a couple of weeks ago, one of our clinical insights was also about shoulders. This is two more shoulder cases, yet it's very interesting. So I want to share these. So first one was an older gentleman. He's in his 80s. And like a couple months ago, he reached out for something. I forget the exact story, but he reached out for something like a door and it slipped and he heard a pop in his shoulder and it hurt right away. And went, kind of traditional route and got MRIs and checked ups and whatnot. And they basically said they tore his rotator cuff. And really, the option was surgical. That's what the option was. And I want to tell everyone right away, listen, too often, way too often, you're told you have a torn rotator cuff. There are very simple muscle tests that should be performed. And if your muscle has any strength in the actual test, it's not torn. It may be frayed, it may be compromised, it may be out of position, but it might not be torn. So anyways, this gentleman had he's had many surgeries in his life. 2 rotator cuff surgeries already, 1 in each shoulder. And these were a while ago. And he's 83 years old. So this conversation was very interesting because he came in and classic, had no range of motion. And when he went to move his shoulder, his whole body moves. Totally. So he's really moving his body as he's lifting his shoulder. And you could see he's grimacing in pain. One of the things what's really neat right away is that I'm able to then say, okay, that range of motion hurt. How about this one or this one? And I show him there's a couple of different ranges of motion. And sure enough, 1 or 2 of them didn't hurt as much as the others, but all of them for the most part hurt. I say, okay, let me get my hands in there. Let's see what we got. Let me see if we can increase range of motion and decrease pain in the next 5 minutes. And I say that because I want to give them a little light, and maybe I can, maybe I can't. I have no idea. I haven't touched it. I haven't even tested it, but I will tell you in a shoulder case, first thing you do is you test the muscles. And I say that because I'm guessing that everyone listening to this will think, well, Dr. Bart, that makes perfect sense. All doctors would do that, wouldn't they? And the answer is no. I don't know any doctors, quite frankly, that test the shoulder muscles anymore. And why that's so important is here's why. Under trauma, and we've talked about this a little bit here on the Health Made Simple show before, when you have trauma to the human body, one of the ways that the body protects itself, if there's an injury, it takes away power. So you can pull a hamstring and it's not torn, but now you can't use your hamstring properly. Same thing with your rotator cuff. Remember, the rotator cuff is really 4 different muscles that make up part of the shoulder girdle, part of it. And there's the deltoid and whatnot that covers over it. But if one of those muscles is compromised, your body will take away power in that particular range of motion. So for many of us out there that have studied kinesiology and how to muscle test, we learn how to isolate the muscle, test the muscle, but also have techniques to see if we can make the muscle fire again. And this is really fascinating, this part of it. I'm so glad that years ago I decided to study some kinesiology because I didn't learn in chiropractic school. I learned it outside of school. So my reason I say that is not all chiropractors know it, but mostly it's chiropractors who practice kinesiology. but by being able to isolate the muscle, but also being able to help refire it. And what is refiring? Imagine for a moment that on your kitchen counter, you have your blender and your coffee pot. And for some reason, you click on your blender and it blows the circuit. So all of a sudden, nothing works properly. Your blender doesn't work and your coffee pot doesn't work, but they're not broken. It was overloaded. When the circuit is overloaded, it takes power away. This is how the human body works. We are electrical currents. If there's a trauma, it doesn't matter why, you get crushed in a football game, you slip and fall, you get a car accident. If there's been trauma to the body, maybe you reach too far, you miss something, and your body's a little bit older than it once was, and you tweak something, and the body experiences some level of trauma. The next thing that happens, it takes away power, so you can't use that body part. This is what's got to go through our doctors' minds. And this will go through a lot of doctors' minds that are probably listening to this. So what do? We test the muscle, and then we see, can we flip the circuit? Can I go into the garage, flip the circuit breaker, and turn the coffee pot and the blender back on? And if I can do that, I go, good. I don't have to get a new coffee pot. I don't have to dissect my blender. I don't have to buy new blades or whatever it may be. Maybe what I have works. I just have to learn how to navigate a little bit better. So anyways, I lie him down. First thing I do, and this is probably not going to surprise him, but first thing I do is I take care of his spine. Make sure all the nerves and everything's going out. So I lie him down. I kind of do what I do in terms of getting the fascia release, got the shoulder fascia release. I use a little instrument for that. And this is important to understand because under trauma too, it's usually tightness. So tightness with no power makes it very painful to move. And the reason I'm sharing this with, there's so many people out there with shoulder issues right now, and they swear that it's torn and there's nothing else can they do. And they live in pain every single night, numbness and tingling. They can't move. Everything they've done doesn't work. I see day in and day out, shoulders recover. Anyways, so I lie him down, I get all the muscle to get the blood flow back into the joint, take care of whatever spinal misalignments or limitations that he had, which were several, right? So he's in his 80s, nice and gentle, nice and easy. Again, I'm feeling good, stand them up, test them. I refire the situation. There's a kind of a technique we call it an OI technique, origin insertion technique. Doctors out there, they know what I'm talking about. Very simple. I could teach it to a 10th grader. That's how simple this is. I flip the circuits, literally like saying, hey, Whip, you don't have to know anything about electricity. Go flip that circuit for me. Turn it back on, blender works, hallelujah. So I flip the circuit, and then I do a couple other things. And then I adjust his shoulder. Yes, and you're going to find someone knows how to adjust extremities and whatnot, but nonetheless, I adjust his shoulder. And yes, he's an 83-year-old man, and yes, I can adjust it. I'm not going to break him. People aren't that frail. Adjust his shoulder. I refire it, I get him moving, and I have him, I said, just for kicks, let me see you move your shoulder again. He starts to move it in range of motion, and the look on his face was one of those, what just happened here moments. So really cool.
It's such an incredible thing because I know there's so many people listening who have had rotator cuff injuries or perceive that they did or know someone who did. And when you started the story, Bart, and you mentioned like in 5 minutes, we're going to get to feeling better. I mean, that's a hallelujah moment indeed.
It is. And that's not the best part of the story. Well, I don't, that's not the most profound part of the story that I'm really trying to share, because I'm going to tell you another story. Exact same thing happened. And it's two different situations here. So when it gets done, he says, what do you think? Is this going to last? And I said, Doc, honestly, I said, actually, I'm the doc here. So I said, honestly, I think we're going to be able to improve your shoulder function right now, decrease pain and or increase range of motion and ability to use it, minimum 30%, probably as much as 70% overall. And he said, and his eyes lit up, and he says, if you could get this 30% better, I won't have to have surgery. And I said, are you trying to avoid surgery? I don't know, right? And he said 100%. And he said, listen, I'm 83 years old. My doctor says it's okay for me to go under anesthesia. He's like, my friend just went under anesthesia, and he's never been the same since. This is my point. When you're 83 years old or you're later in life, it is not the same. The options aren't the same. It's not, I tore my rotator cuff, I'm just going to go get a surgery and fix this and be out tomorrow. And I said, well, if you did have the surgery, you think you even have the physical capacity to go through the rehab that you require you? And he said, no way. So the amount of relief, and he's not looking for perfection. And I think depending on where you are and what you've done with your body, that also has to be taken into consideration of where you are. So the next patient I'm going to talk about, total different conversation because of the age of the individual and the capacity that they still have. So for him, and I'm not saying to lower the bar at all, but to be pain-free and use his shoulder pretty well, and to be able to avoid, at that point, if you're having surgeries when you're 80 years old, they are all life-threatening. Don't pretend that they're not. If you go under anesthesia, there's a lot more risk involved. And he did say, it's like my cardiologist says no, and this guy says yes. So there was a lot of different information. So long story short, he walks out of feeling great. Then, of course, we didn't stop there. So then we made sure he got some sound wave therapy, which is fantastic, which is actually going to help him increase the vascularization into those fibrotic tissue. And that's really what it is. The rotator cuff, they're very, very thin muscles, supraspinatus muscle, infraspinatus muscle, very, very small, very thin. And the tendons are even thinner and smaller. So they have a tendency as we age to get the least amount of nutrients, and they fray and they can tear. The sound wave therapy will increase vascularization to them and then also elicit the stem cell response. So I'm super excited for this gentleman. And just the fact that we were able to have the real conversation about where he was relative to surgery, because it wasn't that we were anti-surgery. The fact of the matter is a lot of healing could take place, just hadn't explored that avenue yet. And it was kind of a lucky draw that he even got there. It was conversation through a conversation to a conversation that got him there. And then the other part was recognizing that where we are in life also should determine what we are doing, because what's good for one is not always good for the other. All right. So let me quickly flip that into the next one. A very, very similar situation. So a young female in her 30s, and so the first guy had the shoulder problem for a couple months. Hers was over a year and had it treated prior to that for a year. And prior, she was getting some acupuncture, chiropractic, and physical therapy. And she said she was doing great while she did it. And got off track. Life got in the way a little bit. Stress built up. She no longer found the time to go get therapies. And then in that mode, and this is very common, sometimes we do things and it's not always convenient. And sometimes it's even hard. What we're doing just to keep our head above water. But if we don't do them, you're going to go under. And so she started to go under. And this is in her own recognition for, like her acknowledging this to me. And in that, she started looking for what's a quicker way out. And I know that. I know exactly what it is. I've shared this here in the Health Made Simple show about my knee giving me so much problems for 18 months that I was looking for a shortcut. So what happens then? Then you do the testing. You get the MRIs. You get the CAT scans. And then someone whispers, oh, you probably just get a surgery. This will all go away. Well, she was told the same thing. She got MRIs for her shoulder and multiple different doctors. And one thing led to another, and she just didn't want to do that. She wanted a quick fix, but she didn't want to take that route. She trusts and knows her body. So anyway, she's on vacation. And on vacation, someone referred her, or someone how, so I don't even know, but like many things in life, just kind of serendipitous. She comes in. Very, very similar. This one, though, this is what was interesting in this one. So as she's standing in front of me, young, healthy, attractive young woman who standing there, I could tell that her breathing pattern was off. So I know it sounds odd, but one of the ways I'm able to assist is because I can see how people breathe regularly. And anyone who's out there practicing, you get it. Like you can see their breathing, you can see they hold their body, you can see the way they're everything. There's just so much that tells you about how the individual in front of you is breathing. I could tell she's very limited in breath. And I asked her, I said, do you feel like your breath is tight right now? She said, absolutely. And if you can imagine if your breath is tight, where your shoulders might be, right? Yeah. And she was, so, be rolling forward and it looks kind of stressful. So anyways, lie her down, get her adjusted. Well, actually, I didn't even adjust her. This was the interesting part. I use this little vibrocussor, and the vibrocussor is really interesting little therapy machine where it has percussion, which is a tapping noise, it's almost like a little jackhammer, and it's a vibration, which is like, I don't know, it vibrates. They do two different things. Tapping helps us override what the current nervous system input is doing to the brain. A simple example is if there's a crying baby, pretty much every alive human being innately, intuitively picks the baby up and pats it on its back. Okay. That's what we do with babies. More often than not, calms them down. The reason that's happening is because we're doing it directly on their spine, typically over the thoracic spine. We don't know any of this. This is just what happens with humans. We have grandma did it, mommy did it. Everyone picks a baby up, pats it, bounces it up and down a little bit for the vibration, pats it on the back for percussion. It bombards the brain, gives it new input, shuts down the stressor. So we are literally therapeutically helping the little babies when we pat and rub them, which is pretty cool. So I'm just using my vibrocussor, and I could just see and change in her breathing patterns, which is a really cool. It's not the first time. I see this often. Sometimes I use the vibrocussor until they change their breathing patterns, because to adjust somebody in a wound up state is not always the best situation. You can do it, but it's not always the best. So anyways, I get her unwound and I stop, and she goes to get up off the table. She's like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." She thought that was the treatment. And literally she was like, "Oh my God, I can breathe better. I feel better. My shoulder's already getting better." It was really interesting. And I think everyone listening to this already knows that her issue wasn't necessarily her shoulder, it was stress, but it wrapped her fascia up so much, it was chronic. So now she's at the point, literally, this is how she described it. I sit down to do work for 5 minutes and my neck and shoulder hurt. And I get this like numbness and tingling. She had MRI scans, nerve conductivity scans, all this kind of stuff. So same thing, I get her adjusted, take care of her spine, cervical spine here in this situation as well, stand her up, muscle test, no problem with the rotator. It is a little weak, range of motion is a little limited. I adjust her shoulder, do the OI technique, origin insertion technique, get it firing again. And she can't believe what just happened. She can't, and really, she's like, "I can't believe I spent 2 years working on this and I've never felt this good." Point being here. And so when we had a moment to just kind of exhale on it, I said, "Here's the good news, hon. When I test your shoulder, I don't think there's anything wrong mechanically. I think you're so used to being stressed and wound up, and that's your go-to posture. It's like this protective mechanism that you're always putting your tires on crooked every day, and then you're driving your car at high speeds." And she got that. She I think it rang a bell. So 2 total different situations, 2 very wonderful outcomes, and a lot that goes with it too. It's not just a diagnosis. It is not just an MRI. It's a human being that gets an MRI, but there's a whole story that goes with that.
All right, those are such beautiful reflections of people becoming aware, like even when they're with you, and like what their experience is with their body. And I have to ask you, so for this OI technique, when you get the muscles to fire, is that only for the shoulders?
No. So I can do that in any muscle in the body. Yeah. So it's very common that we'll have to do it in the lower extremities. It's probably the most common, because if you have anything going on with your foot, ankle, knee, hip, lower spine, our hips are kind of especially our hip flexors are some of the most abundantly and frequently used muscles. Like you can kind of give your shoulder a break, but your hip flexors, right? The ones you stand up with, the ones you walk with, not so much. So you have imbalances anywhere, and lumbar spine, whatever, your hip flexors will start to take away power. I'll get a good example would be if you notice you're starting to have issues going up or down stairs, whether it be in your foot, ankle, knee, hip, it's just harder to do. You're not firing. Yeah. Your hip flexors are not firing. We got to get them fired up and get the imbalances out of there, and it'll change the whole game.
Magical. And so to seek that out, that would be like looking for a chiropractor who's versed in kinesiology.
Correct. Yeah. And I would specifically, because the chiropractor, he or she would absolutely know if they say, "Do you do the kinesiology that involves getting muscles to fire, muscle testing and muscle firing?" And they'd say, "Absolutely." And it'd be kind of cool. They'd be that practitioner would be like, "Cool, that someone actually knows that." Because a lot of times when we're doing this, it borderline looks like and feels like voodoo, but it's not. It is absolutely not. It's physiology 101.
Well, it sounds so awesome. And it's so cool that you practice that technique and that you teach it, Bart. Did I hear you say correctly that this is something you can teach to your clients?
Yeah, it's very easy to teach. I don't teach a lot because not people ask me to do. That's not why they're there for. But I'll gladly teach someone that comes in just to kind of help refire muscle. It's great for athletes and people trying to use their bodies, and it's very simple. It's non-invasive, so it's easy breezy.
Beautiful. All right, Bart, should we slide into tonight's topic?
Yeah, let's do it. Fantastic topic. Again, I think we could cover this about every other month, and I think that would be barely enough. Unfortunately, sleep affects probably more people than it doesn't. And like I opened up the show with the idea that technically sleeping and pooping should be some of the most natural, easy here is the key word, easily attained things that we should be able to do as humans. And that's not necessarily the situation for everyone. And if that's the case, that's why we're here tonight. I want to define it better for everybody so you know what kind of sleeping issue you have if you have one, and then what are the remedies. And what are things maybe we have to pay attention to? And I'll preface it by saying this: yes, it's going to involve your diet. Yes, it's going to involve your lifestyle. And yes, it's going to involve a supplement and herb here and there, because we do have deficiencies. We do have chemistry interference with our body, and then we also got energy fields that are messing up with our bodies. But I'll tell you this also, because I've done both sides of this. I have definitely lived a portion of my life, and I think many people have done this, especially if you're entrepreneurial spirit and you're just a go-getter, you got that personality just tries to go for more, that I spent probably over a decade of my life almost priding myself in the fact I didn't need much sleep. Now, that was my knucklehead days. I can't take those back, but I certainly can learn from them. I've also flipped it over where now I have put a massive emphasis in these last several years of my life on focusing on the ability to sleep, and not only sleep, but high quality sleep. And if we have time tonight, we'll talk about what that means. So I'm not talking about just how many hours did I lie down, because there's a big misperception about that. Oh, well, I went to bed at 8 and I got up at 5, right? Maybe you slept that whole time. Most likely not. But I will say this: the more you sleep, the better human you are. Better hormone, you get better hormone balance, you lose more weight, your mind works better, you're clearer, you're kinder, you have more energy, more creativity, more focus, more love in your life. All the above happens when you have more sleep in your life, period.
You got the truth part. And I know when we talk about sleep, like someone said to me recently that sleep was a suggestion to them. Bless. So I know that we are focusing on making sleep a priority. And I've been hanging around with you long enough to know there's some pretty great questions that we can ask right on the front end. So when someone says, I can't sleep,
Yeah.
what are those questions, Bart, that we start with?
Yeah. So there's really 3 questions we've got. So this helps us narrow it down. So if you're listening, first you want to ask yourself, if my sleeping issue is an issue with falling asleep, we'll tackle that in just a moment. Is it with staying asleep? That's probably the biggest group. Or is it that you wake up tired, even though you've slept a good amount of time? So we want to tackle which one of it is of those 3. Sometimes you got all 3. And we're going to address that tonight as well. So let's just talk about the first one to start with. Do you have an issue falling asleep? All right. So in the event that we have an issue falling asleep, we want to do a couple things. I want to start and talk about the lifestyle parts of really what we call circadian rhythm. And what does that really mean to all of us? And what that means is this: whether we want to or like to or don't even really believe in it, truth is we should adhere to nature's rhythm as much as we possibly can, which means abiding by the laws of nature, which be circadian rhythm. And all that really means, this is how simple it is: get up with the light, go to bed with the dark. That's it. Get up with the light, go to bed with the dark, preferably always eat in the light. And that would be as simple as we need to do to make sure you're doing things properly in terms of timing. And I know not everyone can do that. Some people work second shifts, third shifts, and there's other remedies for there as well. And then the other part of that would be this, is that we want enough time to make sure that we're in bed. Now, if we went by those rules right there, that would do it. So if you got up with the light and went to bed with the dark, for the most part, there'd be enough time in that window right there to you get enough rest. We're going to shoot for, let's just say, 8 hours. You and I had a discussion today, and we both monitor and we have a lot of data measuring our sleep, output, I guess, our outcomes. We happen to use Oura Ring. There's no affiliation there. So I should be affiliated because I really love their product, but nonetheless, we measure it. And I was able to look at yours and say, Whitney, your target should be 7.5 hours. If you get more, perfect. But based on your data, if you got 7.5 hours, you'd wake up feeling like superwoman. Yeah.
And like, I'm here to say that I do wake up feeling like Superwoman when I sleep 7.5 hours or more. That's the truth.
Yes. Yeah. So the nice thing is that data often doesn't lie. So that's pretty cool. So, but not everyone has those, but we can still use this as a benchmark. So the other part here is the absolute best that you can. And I'm saying these things because clinically, what I discover is this, is that people who usually have poor sleeping results, there's many commonalities. One is that there's inconsistencies with what time they go to bed and when they get up. And this is your body wants and needs rhythm for sleep. So going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time is very important. Now, for those of you who out there have a hard time falling asleep, this is what I always hear from you. You say, well, I can't go to bed, then I'm not tired. Go to bed anyways and get up early anyways. You will have to break that cycle. You have to. And there's really no way around it. If you keep going to bed later and later and later, you're going to cause more dysfunction, not just sleep issues, but more dysfunction taking place in the body. So, all right. So falling asleep, we'll talk about some remedies in just a moment. Well, we'll talk about them right now. So falling asleep issues, here's what I find are usually the causes, the culprits of us not falling asleep. There's going to be three common ones for all three of these conditions, whether it's fall asleep, stay asleep, or wake up. Three common ones. This is food, phone, and thoughts. So those are the three stressors. So stressors in general, think of food, phone, and thoughts. When I say phone, I want to think of any electronic devices. Our computers, our TVs aren't. TVs used to be the bad guy. I could almost argue there could be a value a little bit. Turning the TV on for a moment to check your brain out. So this is not uncommon that if someone comes to see me, and I'll address this here, sometimes when people say, Doc, do you think it's okay if I just turn the TV on? It just seems to distract my mind for a moment. Absolutely. Sometimes that's what we need to do when it comes to, if the stressor is our thoughts and we can't let go of the day, if there's something that can distract you, not engulf you. Engulf you means now you're watching TV for the next, 1, 2, 3 hours. That's not what we're going. But if you turn on the TV, you kind of have something you don't care about. Next thing you know, you're dozing off, shut TV off and go to bed. Beautiful. The other part would be getting your thoughts out of your brain. How do you do that? Write things down. If you're really that busy, write them all down. Here's what I know about the evening hours, especially nighttime hours. Nothing productive happens and nothing good happens. Yeah.
I remember hearing that from some years ago, Bart. Yes.
Yes. So nothing good happens once it gets dark in terms of adding value and benefit to your life. So you can almost say at this point, you're choosing to waste hours of recovery, hours of rejuvenating, et cetera. So consider that when you decide, well, I'm just going to stay up a little later and stay on Google or whatever it may be. I promise you, there's not much taking place. You're not getting real creative in those hours. Now you're just using up energy. I will say this. Over all these years, I've observed a couple behaviors and a couple reasons for this type of behavior at night to seek and stay on our Facebook and stuff. And a lot of it is because of lack of satisfaction during the day. And I say that not to make anyone feel bad, but maybe it's what we need to hear. So we do look at our day and try to find out, is it adding up? Is there any purpose? Are we purpose driven? Are we moving in the direction we want to be with our professional careers, with our relationships, with our friends, our families? And just to observe it and say, well, am I getting enough out? Am I putting enough into the day to get enough out of it so I could go to bed at night? And I think these things are overlooked, especially nowadays when we have so many remedies, which I'm going to talk about those as well in just a moment. As we have so many remedies for sleep, we should also be looking at the culprits. And I would say if you're having a hard time falling asleep, it's usually two major things. One, that you have continued to use your electronic devices, blue light specifically. Blue light, folks, listen to me real closely when I say this. Blue light is part of the spectrum that sunlight gives us. When our eyes see sunlight, it shuts off melatonin. That is your sleepy hormone. So when you put your eyeballs on the blue light or in your cell phones and we're in bed, I'm guilty as well. When that happens, your pineal gland is told to stop producing melatonin. Don't release it into the body. The mitochondria doesn't release it into the body. And now all of a sudden you don't have your hormone that kind of gives you that, whoa, I'm going to slow down and I kind of feel like dozing off now. you actually make that gland, that part of your body say, no, don't do this. Be wide awake because we have this bright light in our face. So very important. There's not going to be really a way around this. I found for me, the best cycle to break is I started reading old school, and I've been an audio listener, like, what's that, the app
Like
with
Audible, maybe.
yeah, Audible, and I love it because I can do it in the car or the truck. And so I definitely tended to that. But when I started finding myself using my phone more and more before bed, I said, all right, I know how to break this. I would bust out my book, old school. I'd last like 3 pages and out I went. My book would hit my face and I'd fall asleep. So to get your eyes tired from reading is actually very good, because that'll also tell your body the thing to do is then close your eyes. So it's another way to create a little bit of drowsiness. So we have that. And then if you have issues falling asleep because you're just wound up, I'll make a couple of suggestions here in terms of what herbs to use. If you find yourself super wound up, one of the best herbs is my favorite to use is kava. Kava, the reason I love to use this is because it works fast and it works really, really good. And you can use it as you need it. And kava is basically like this chill out pill. And you can figure out what dosing is good for you. I usually find anywhere between 1 and 4 is really good dosing. So it works a little bit like a muscle relaxer, where kicks in about 15 minutes, wears off in a couple hours, but it often will help the people who have a hard time falling asleep drop it. Now, this being said, remember, these are herbs, not drugs. If you're on your phone popping kava, it's not going to work. Yeah. So just be mindful, set yourself up to win here. So if you have this one activity that you're doing, this total sympathetic dominance, which is phone activity, bright lights for the eyes, that's going to have your system, your nervous system in, full out go. So just be real mindful of that, because how you go to bed is going to determine the rhythm through the evening. So you might pass out because you're exhausted, but you passed out on your phone. But the rhythm 3, 4, 5 hours later, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, is going to offset what's taking place at that time. We're going to get to that in just a moment here. And that's because the body stayed in this passed out because it was exhausted, but it's in sympathetic dominance. And now a little bit later, you're going to have this cortisol effect in the middle of the night. It's going to spike your blood sugar and you're going to wake up. So, and we'll tackle that in just a moment here. So in the event you're having a hard time falling asleep, get rid of the phone and the blue light devices. Do the best that you can. You owe it to yourself, right? I'm going to sleep. You'll be a human being that's, like the best version of yourself will happen when you're getting better sleep. So get rid of the phone for a little while, at least experiment with it. Get a little kava about an hour before bed. If you feel like you really need to double down, do double dose. Do an hour before bed and then again right before bed. And more often than not, I find people do really good on that.
Is it true, Bart, that kava also gives you like a little bit of a gentle relaxation to your muscles as well?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about it, is that it literally it works like a muscle relaxer. So for those people that are so wound up, they kind of need that. I'm not telling you go out there and like get a drug muscle relaxer, but to be able to unwind, it's not just unwind your thoughts, but it's unwind physically. So one of the other challenges, and this is often lost in the conversation, but when it comes to lifestyle, this is really important for us to understand. The lack of exercise is causing poor sleep. And I'll say this in a way maybe that people haven't heard it before. So we have this discord between the mind and the body. You have a mind that's going 200 miles an hour during the day and a body that's going like 1 mile an hour. It's sitting at a desk. The legs aren't even moving. Heck, your butt cheeks are going numb because there's no blood flow, right? Because you're sitting all day, you're driving the cars. So there's a big discord, a big disconnection between the mind and the body when we have a real stressful situation going on in our lives or busy work and whatnot, and we're not physically doing things with our body. The moment you start exercising, what you'll find is that if you can do the same thing with your body, get it revved up, it'll be tired and want to fall asleep later in the day. I don't find many people that are exercising, and so they have circadian rhythm, up with the light, bed with the dark, exercising, that have a hard time falling asleep. So if they're following the rhythm, so they're not staying up all night, they're not just wasting time and wasting valuable part of their life, and they're exercising during the day. And listen, the exercise does not have to be, crush your body. but you got to move. You got to get blood flow going. You got to get lymphatic system. You got to get your hormones moving. You got to create that simple law of supply and demand. All right, so that's one category. Falling asleep could also be an issue of you're eating too close to bed. Yeah. So the philosophy or kind of the embracing of to eat in the light is also important. Now we have later days right now. So I think it's still late here. We're pushing, 7 o'clock soon. So I would say as the time changes, make sure you're just paying attention to the clock. So if I want to be in bed by 9 o'clock, I should be eating by now, right? Or prior. So there's time to digest. You're going to need, for the most part, you want to be up 2 to 3 hours, preferably, before you expect your body to be able to rest after eating.
So just in case anyone is asking, like that also would include like whatever the after dinner snack is, like whatever's getting into the bowl after that, all of that culminating 2 to 3 hours prior.
100%. And then as I slide into this next phase, which I'll start talking about now, which is a staying up. And I think this is probably a little bit more, I probably run into this a little bit more common where people wake up in the night. Most typical time is going to be between 1 and 4 a.m. And there's several reasons for this. Here on the Health Made Simple show, we've talked often about between 1 and 4, one of the simple remedies is to increase your magnesium intake. There's specifics there. My preference is magnesium lactate. It's very easy to absorb. So magnesium is a relaxation mineral, and we need it for approximately 300 different enzymatic reactions in the body. So in the event you become deficient in magnesium, your body is going to be out of tune, specifically your liver. So the liver, especially in Chinese medicine, that is its time to go to work. That is when it's going to help you detox. It's going to rejuvenate things like glutathione. That's when it's going to help balance hormones and conjugate different hormones. A lot of those things are happening in the liver. But in the event it doesn't have the tools to do it, something like magnesium, there's a good chance you'll wake up. So that's always been our first go-to. Yet that doesn't cover for everyone. There's going to be a lot of listeners that, Doc, I've done that and I still wake up. I have my magnesium every night and I'm still waking up. All right, now let's talk about the other things that have been causing this. So one, we got to watch for the foods that we eat that night. If you're eating that late night, bowl of cereal, glass of wine or alcohol, there's a high likelihood that you are going to wake up in that phase. You'll fall asleep because your blood sugars will drop. And now listen, sugar is stress to the body, which means when your body's processing that sugar, it's going to have a cortisol effect. Most likely the cortisol effect is going to happen between 1 and 4 a.m. Cortisol makes the liver wake up and dump more sugar into the body. So we have a blood sugar imbalance in the middle of the night. Interpreted improperly, we could say, oh my goodness, we need more carbohydrates, because we had these blood sugar dips and therefore my body was under stress. I didn't have enough carbohydrates, so it spiked. No, that's not really a cause. It's because we stressed it out because of the sugar. We stressed it out because of the alcohol, and it manipulated the blood sugar levels. So we really got to watch what we're putting into our bodies. Everyone out there right now, that you're a consistent wine drinker, 3 nights a week, 5 nights a week, and I say wine, a cocktail a night. When you take 2 or 3 nights off, first thing you notice, man, I slept better last night, period. So a little bit to what we talked about last week, sometimes we have to look at our style that we're living our lives, our lifestyle, and are the outcomes of your style worthy? Are they the ones that you want? And I know this for a fact. You sleep better, everything is better. And therefore you won't need that bowl of ice cream and or that glass of wine as much as you think you need it, because you're already awesome. You have enough calories in your body. You don't need the glass of wine to take away any stress because you're exercising during the day. Like, you start to add these things up, and we need those things less and less, especially if you sleep better. So consider those. And then there's another component here, and this is the one that we probably talk about the least, and this is the impact on what we call your adrenal glands. And this is one I really wanted to bring into light tonight, because this is probably the last to be talked about, but could be the most serious, if I want to talk, the hardest to fix. And it could be the deepest underlying issue. And this is when your adrenals are out of balance. This can often look like we have, and this could cover all 3 of these. This could cover the fact that you have a hard time going to sleep. This could have a hard time when you're waking up. You wake up during the middle of the night, and you could sleep 8 hours and still be tired. You could have one of those or 3 of those, and it could be an adrenal issue. And really what happens with our adrenal glands, they're the ones that are trying to help us regulate stress. So they're on our side. And in the morning when you wake up, you should have a high cortisol level, and it's part of your energy system. And that makes sure that if you wake up and you got a lot going on, you can handle it. You don't necessarily have to have your cup of coffee. You might have one, but your body was already designed with all the biochemistry it needs to approach your day. And as your day goes, your cortisol levels should drop. And in a minute, I do want to explain how we figure this out. Your cortisol levels should drop. For some people, because during the end of their day, they have after dinner, there's maybe sugar, there might be the phone, they might get stressed out. They have a spike. So they were getting tired midday, tired around dinner time, but then after dinner, all of a sudden they're wired again. And that's what we call wired and tired. And you get, and those of you listening, go, that's me. That's me. All of a sudden, 8 and 9 o'clock comes, I'm wide awake. And you think it's because you're getting creative. No, it's biochemistry, because you're having a spike of cortisol, which is your stress hormone that should be almost at zero by the time the late evening comes. And that tells your adrenal system the way that it's operating, and think of it as a thermostat, it's unregulated. And that's because it's been under prolonged stress for long, long periods of time, mostly stuck in sympathetic dominance. And as a result of it, now it's dysregulated. So then we have a couple options. One would be, what can we possibly do for the adrenal? Well, let me talk about testing real quickly here. Probably the most accurate way, there are some symptoms that go with this, and I'll discuss those in just a moment, but most accurate would be to test your adrenals. And there's an at-home functional medicine test you can do. It comes in a little box. So we have them, like if you were local, you could just literally swing by. But one day you would spit into these vials, 4 or 5 vials through the course of the day. And this would be good. This would help us actively measure your hormones, specifically your cortisol, first thing when you wake up, late morning, early afternoon, and then before bed. By having that data right there, that would let us know clinically what our next steps are. And sometimes those steps are a little bit, I wouldn't say that they're difficult, but they need to be very strategic. Do we need to help therapeutically restore function to the gland? Yes or no? Do we need to just repair the deficiencies to the gland? And so there's many things that we could learn through that type of testing that we wouldn't by guessing at it.
So in the case that you haven't done the testing yet, Bart, what would be like other signs and symptoms for like adrenal, fatigue, or the glands not operating at their like maximum capacity?
Yeah, so there's several. There's one, you could literally just have a good night's sleep and you're tired every morning. There's a couple that go with that, but body achy, sore. So the more you work out, the more sore you feel. And this is an important one for my athletes, because a lot of times with adrenal fatigue comes weight gain, even though your diet hasn't really changed. Once your adrenals start to get exhausted or become dysfunctional or get what we call adrenal fatigue, it is not uncommon that we start to try to eat more for energy, because you're going to lack energy. So brain fog, a couple classic signs would also be that you start to bruise easily, you don't recover as much, fatigue during the day, forgetfulness, all of those things that just come with general fatigue. And less motivation is definitely going to be one of them. So all of those show up, and then I'll give you another just classic sign. When your adrenals are dysfunctional, so there's your fight or flight hormone, which is a hormone that kicks in and boom, you make a decision, you run, or you fight, you throw punches, or you run as fast as you can. And there's no gap there, it just happens. How that shows up in real life would be, you now can't make a decision. You didn't fight and you didn't flight. You're like, where do you want to eat? I don't know. I can't make a decision for me. A lot of people have that. Those are subtleties of showing us that our adrenal system, our hormonal system, is becoming less and less functional. It's becoming dysfunctional as a result of not having the proper hormones in the proper time at the proper time of day. So what do we do about those? One, if you're in that category, definitely get them tested. I don't think the testing, I forget the pricing on it, but I think it's under $200, somewhere between $100 and $200 you can spend and be really, really accurate. If that is not something you want to do, get with your functional health practitioner. Don't go out this by yourself, because quite frankly, when you're tired like that, your ability to map out and stick to a strategy is going to be very difficult, because you're exhausted. When you're exhausted, very difficult to have discipline. So you need somebody kind of saying, do this now, do this then. And oftentimes in my adrenal cases, they might have a million things going on. I take everything off the table. Maybe they're on supplements and other protocols, but when it's an adrenal situation and they're no longer properly sleeping, they're no longer functioning like a natural human being, even though all those other things are definitely important, the adrenals go right to the top of that list. Because if they're not sleeping, all those things aren't going to get better no matter what they do anyways. So we move in the direction of, okay, especially if your capacity is not great, I just can't do any more. That's the individual that has an adrenal issue. I get too much like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed. Could be with the supplements, the exercise, the eating plans, all of that. I get too much going on. That individual needs a really, really good sound strategy that can take into account where they currently are in their life. And that's, again, almost like when we were talking about earlier with the two different individuals with the shoulder issues. We're not our tasks. We are humans that get tasked to figure out what other strategies we might be able to take.
So whether it be like a challenge in your sleep of falling asleep, or you're waking up in the night, or you're waking up tired, Bart, why is it that so many people have a tough time with sleep these days?
Well, I think it boils down to those three things. I think it boils down to that we have stressors, right? So we'll take stressors as a whole category. And number one being that I think one and two are probably tied, and it's going to be food and phone. Both of those need to be improved. Those are sugar imbalances. Sugar is a stressor to the human body. We use it almost every night for a lot of people. And I think the phone inhibition, remember the phone, that blue light is inhibiting melatonin. A lot of people say, well, should I take melatonin? Once you start using melatonin, you are doing hormone replacement therapy. So there's pros and cons to that. So the dosing that your pineal gland is 0.3 milligrams. So when I look at the supplements out there, the lowest I've seen out there is 3 milligrams, which is 10 times the natural dose. So when I say we got to be careful, when it comes to hormones, it's different than taking too many B vitamins. Like you just pee them out, no big deal. You take 10 times the amount of melatonin, fine if you go on it and maybe you can't convert all of it anyways, but what's the after effect? And then what happens if you ever try to come off of that? So those are where you really need to be working with the practitioner. And if the practitioner is really loosey-goose and even taking melatonin, for me, raise an eyebrow, because like I just said, the body only produces 0.3 milligrams, 0.3. And the closest supplementation I've seen is 3 milligrams, which is 10 times. It's a massive amount for the body to be taken in. So food and phone, we have too much electronics going on in our lives right now. There's too much input. They're very stressful. And then also the daily stressors, the things that we aren't doing so well, which would also include things like breathing. The beauty is that's a home remedy that any one of us can do. And remember, with the breathing, it's all about the exhale. If you can exhale slowly, you can't necessarily be stressed. So to answer your question, what are the bigger things that are causing these poor sleep issues? Our food. So our body and our immune system, every time you put a food into your body, your body either accepts it and says, thank you, I'm going to use this as a building block. I'm going to use this to help detox my body. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Or it's going to say, what the bleep was that? And now it has to have a defense mechanism, an immune response. Consistent immune responses are exhausting. They create inflammation in the body. They create the stuffiness at night. You wake up with stuffiness. That's when I know clinically, that's why sometimes it's relatively easy for me to figure out where the root cause is. When doc, I wake up every morning, I have a stuffy nose. Well, there's a good chance that we're not putting the right things in your body the night before. So we know these things. So the food is a big part of it. And the stimulus nowadays, huge. I think the stressors, and I found in my personal life, I don't know that, and I found this out clinically too, is that I don't know that we ever get rid of our stressors. I think the only mechanism is really that we get better at managing them. We increase the capacity that we have as humans to manage our stressors. I think there was this thought that all of us, as we get aged, we'd have less stress, like we'd get it all figured out. I don't believe that really happens. And I think that the more lucky we are to have great humans in our life and people and extended families, we just see more stresses. So we have to become a little stronger. We have to increase our capacity. And the single most powerful way to do this is become a better sleeper.
Are there other practices by chance, Bart, that kind of just help swing the pendulum in the direction of health, better sleep, all that good stuff?
Yeah, and they're so easy and they're so readily available. So for example, acupuncture, phenomenal. I every day I get in practice, I get an opportunity to, practice acupuncture on people. And I would say 9 out of 10 people that are in the room fall asleep with pins in them, with needles in them. And it's because we're swinging the pendulum from being in that stress state, like the young lady that was doing the vibrocussor on, that all we did was relax. We bombarded the brain, a little bit of different input. We said time out on that thought process and that how the mind has created a reaction in the body. So if you can inhibit that process for a moment and let your body get back to its natural state, which is very peaceful, very comforting, very feel good type stuff, that's where our body wants to be. Wonderful. So acupuncture, chiropractic adjustment, game changer, easy breezy, time efficient. Listen, if you are going to a chiropractor, I mean, they're on your team. Make sure that you're walking out of feeling better than you walked in. All right. So I'm real picky, and I got some great friends and great chiropractors around. So it's wonderful that I have those resources, but you can have them too. There's a lot of good men and women out there practicing chiropractor. They're all over the place. So you can always find one. Happy to help you if I can. Then there's other things too: breathing patterns, yoga classes, exercise. Let's not discount just the fact of getting outside in the sunlight. So sun is a requirement to create the nice little changes that are taking place and shutting off melatonin in the morning and turning on things like dopamine and other responses and serotonin in the morning. So we want different hormones at different times. And the beauty is that our creator gave us this perfect kind of like, you can't mess this up, even if you tried. And some of us are trying hard, meaning that I'm going to shut the lights out at night and I'll give you the hormones to produce naturally. You'll sleep like a baby. You'll get fully recovered. We'll make it dark out for a good 8-9 hours every day. Make sure you have plenty of time for sleep. And in the morning, I'll turn the lights on so bright that will shut that one off and will release all these other hormones that make you feel good, that make you want to enjoy the day. All you have to do is go outside and see the sun. So I know that sounds simple.
It sounds like a magic trick.
It is a magic trick. And that's how that, and it's really, it is, and it can be that magical for the people that I know that get up every day and they go outside and they take their walk in the morning. Today, these last several weeks, I've now been doing my exercise outside and like my either at the farm or outside here, my pool deck. And it's such a different experience. So I exercise every day in the morning. A lot of times it's in my garage. And it's not super sunny. There's a couple windows in there, but man, when I go outside and I brought the dumbbells out there, my yoga mat out there. When I do it out there, it's a different experience. So I'd say,
yes, it is.
And I would encourage everyone, if you're having trouble sleeping, anything and everything to try is on the table as long as it doesn't interfere with your health.
All right, I know we have a couple more moments here. We had just a question come in if there was any correlation between fertility and sleep. I wonder if you could speak briefly to that.
Sure. And the answer is yes. So fertility is a parasympathetic activity, meaning this. So we have these two parts of our nervous system, two states that our nervous system for the most part can be. It's sympathetic dominance, which is go, 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 essentially fight or flight. It could be freeze as well. And then we have parasympathetic activity, which is rest, which is digest, which is rejuvenate, and it's also to grow, which means baby development. So in order to be able to make babies, for the woman to be able to conceive, the system ideally swings the pendulum from sympathetic into parasympathetic activity. And what I find real consistently is the women who have issues with infertility and they can't seem to get pregnant, maybe they did it before but can't do it again, or they're experiencing miscarriages, often have a time with waking up at night. Have a hard time with waking up at night. And that is a correlation that I see. I don't know that it's causation. I'm not saying if you wake up at night, it's going to do anything to your baby, but it's a correlation that I see clinically that often infertility has much more to do with just your hormones being balanced. Remember, your hormones don't choose to get up and take a hike. They do not do that. What we do with our bodies, what we put into our bodies, what we listen to, what we see, what we talk about will determine their hormonal response. So if we have unfavorable hormones, we need to look at all of those things that we're doing that are affecting the hormones. So the beauty is here. So this, and I had one of these acupuncture sessions today. These are some ones that excite me. She was there for fertility, which I love. Just the idea that they're showing up they were showing up for acupuncture because they heard it was really good, and she wanted to know why. So I explained this to her. stuck in sympathetic. And she was sitting there. Again, I could see her breathing. She had no denial. This individual had a hard time doing the breath demonstrations that I walked through. So we spent the first 10 minutes of her visit. So if you guys were wondering why I was behind today, this is one of the reasons why. We do whatever it takes, however long it takes. I wasn't going to leave that room until I could get her to feel a breath that is fully, and then like a full breath, expanding the full diaphragm breathing with a slow exhale. And it took 10 minutes. And just because those muscles weren't activated, they were so uptight and whatnot. So big aha moment. And then with the fertility, it's no doubt acupuncture improves quality of sleep. I usually like to see them monitor the amount of deep sleep they get, which is just part of sleep. Deep REM, light sleep, and then also get a couple herbs. And if you guys need, you can reach out on this, but I use chase tree, I use a little wheat germ oil, we use a little ashwagandha, and there's some others who use it, but there's a wonderful herb for fertility. So I'm really excited for this young woman because I think she had one of those light bulbs go off. That she's like, oh, got it. Like, yeah, I am wound up. I can't even breathe properly. She was chuckling. Like, yeah, she like, she's a yogi too, which was kind of even funnier, right? Because I think that's where I learned to breathe. So anyways.
Yeah, but sometimes that game changer moment, Bart, you're like, yes, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, I see a lot of when it comes to fertility, there's often a sleep disruption as well. And I would say that disruption, what's happening is it's a disruption in the prime time of getting the body into parasympathetic activity.
Awesome, Bart. Well, we find ourselves here at the end of this sleep show. So I wonder if we could close it out with another question, the last question. What is one step our listeners can take towards becoming superhuman?
So I would say, let's observe your sleep and find out, is it optimal? Is your sleep preparing you to be literally the best version of yourself, or is it enough sleep for you to get by? And figure that one out. And then I promise you that you'll find the better you sleep, the better human you become.
Thank you so much all for joining us here at the Health Made Simple show.
Yes. And once again, thank you everyone for showing up. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. Love and appreciate all of you guys, everything that you're doing to help us, support us, and spreading the word. Absolutely love and appreciate it. And of course, we're going to continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. You gotta be awesome.